Me and Gerhard, we want to show some examples how we do it in Vienna. You know, in Vienna the Greens are quite strong. We have over 12%. It's not the only city where Greens are strong. You know, the strongholds in general of the Greens are the cities and urban areas. In the cities, we are very close to the people on the local level in general. We are close to the people. We can offer specific projects that affect their daily life and that are important for their daily life. We don't talk so much about theory, but we offer concrete solutions for concrete problems. I think this is the biggest advantage of being a politician on a local level. Of course, I'm on the European level now, but I think this is a real challenge to link the local level to what is going on in Europe. I will bring some example on that afterwards. Let's say some initial words about Vienna. Who of you has ever been there? I think many of you, maybe. It's only 3 hours by train away, so it's really nearby. We are real neighbors, not only historically, but now in the European Union, we have to work together, and because we all face common solutions, common problems. Not only the crisis, but also fighting for democracy, for human rights. This is a common problem, especially here in Hungary, I guess, and so we have to bring that up to the European level, what is also going on the local level. Vienna is one of the richest, wealthiest cities all around the world. Yeah? But despite we are the richest, one of the richest cities, we also face problems. We face problems with unemployment. We face problems with precarious work, especially for women, for young people. We feel that the European Union does not always what the people want, but what the big enterprises and the neoliberals want, and that's quite against what Greens or Social Democrats or some parts of the liberals in Austria in Austria wants. So we are fighting for example, for strong public services to serve the needs for the people. We have a very strong public service sector in Austria. For example, social housing is in Vienna one of the biggest social housing sectors all over Europe. Transport, parts of education, also labor market policy, social policy is in the hands of the local level and the public services on the local level, and we really fight for that. We really fight against this trend to privatization, to liberalization that we face all over Europe, because we don't see any positive impacts on privatization. For example, you can see on the first slice number of flats. We have 900,000 flats in Vienna, and council flats, so directly run by the city, owned by the city for the people, are 220,000. And in addition, we have a big let's say, how's the right word? Public-private partnership sector, let's say it like this. So approximately 60% of the people in Vienna live in a social housing sector. That's pretty much, yeah? And this is one of the sectors we really can do social policy. Yeah? Can you go further, please? Thank you, Gerhard. We founded the Red-Green Coalition, so the coalition between the Green Party and the Social Democrats in 2010. We have also local elections next year in June probably, so we are very excited about that. So we start our campaign now. We are not only in government in Vienna, we are meanwhile in government in 5 regions, not only with the Social Democrats, also in some parts with the Conservatives. We are in government in Carinthia, Salzburg, the Tyrol, Upper Austria, and maybe soon, I don't have the latest news, maybe they finish negotiations today. We had in Vorarlberg, it's the Bundesland, it's the region in the west of Austria. We had elections last Sunday that were very successful for the Greens. We gained 17%, that's pretty much. when we see the average in other parts of Europe. So maybe we will be in government in 6 of the regions. And I think that shows that green ideas are not only visionary or something stupid only for visionaries. Of course we have visions, but we really can show that we can put our visions also in practice in form of direct projects and direct policy. Maybe some examples what is really, really important for us on the local level in Vienna. First of all, I mentioned it with the social housing sector, social fairness. Social fairness together with ecological development and with the democracy issue is one of the 3 priorities of the Greens. For example, we introduced in Vienna, when we entered the government 2010, we introduced the highest minimum allowance for children. You know, in Austria there exists a kind of minimum allowance, kind of social income for poor people, but not on the same level in every region. Every region has its own rules and its own minimum allowance, and we as Greens introduced in Vienna the highest minimum allowance for children, because I think this the fighting against child poverty is one of the main issues that it's sometimes very hidden. I think poverty as a whole is sometimes very hidden. Of course, we also have homelessness in Vienna. Yeah? Not pretty much, but we have. But most of the poverty, especially child poverty, especially also women's poverty, it's close at home. You don't see it on the streets. They don't go fighting on the streets. They don't claim for the revolution. They, I don't find the right word now in English. Schämen sich. What's the word? Ashamed. Sometimes feel ashamed. Maybe that's the right word. Yeah. Feel ashamed to show that they are poor. Many people, especially women, that would have would, for example, have the right for a social minimum income, social minimum allowance. They don't go and fetch it. They don't go and claim it because they feel so ashamed that maybe the neighbor or the state or somewhere someone knows that they are poor. So this is a big problem to come near to the people that need help. Maybe you have the same problem in Hungary, in Budapest. It would be interesting to hear how people behave here in Budapest, but in Vienna this is a problem. Also we introduced, Social Democrats before started it, but we made the finalization. We have a free of charge kindergarten. Every kindergarten place from the age of 6 months, I guess, when I'm right. Maybe it's from 1 year, but I think from the age of 6 months, every child gets a free kindergarten. We increased, despite the crisis, although we had the crisis, we increased the social budget by 300 million euros, and we have, as I told you first, we have eviction prevention. In the sense that nobody should be homeless in Vienna, and we have many shelter houses. We build also some new ones, especially for the winter that is coming up now, because winters in Vienna can be very cold, and so we really try to fight homelessness from the local level. And from November 2014 on, we will have free bio-meals in all public half-day primary school. That's some small examples also for combining ecological procurement with social policy. Very important for us is the local level labor market policy. That does not everywhere exist. We know this is especially in Europe, also compared with other cities, this is quite new to say as a city. we make our own local active labor market policy, and we founded a special fund called Vienna Employment Promotion Fund to promote, to implement measures for active labor market policy, especially for young people, for example, for migrants, for women, also for young entrepreneurs. There are special target groups we defined together as government, and we put quite a lot of money in there to really also, let's say, a little bit counterpart the policy from the national level. You know, we don't have red-green on the national level in Austria. We have the so-called Grand Coalition between the Social Democrats and the Christian Democrats, the Conservatives. And they don't care so much about labor market policy, especially they are also affected, as all our countries are, by the policy of the European Union with this Growth and Stability Pact, with the Fiscal Compact, with the deficit criteria, and also Austria. Although we are a rich country, we are affected by these criteria. We have to save money instead of can invest more. So we say from the city level, we want a real offensive investment policy, because especially in times of crisis, we think we have to invest and not to save money. Saving money in times of crisis, especially on the labor market and the social sector, would be the wrong way and would certainly not solve the problem. We want to invest money, and so we try, for example, with a special fund for labor market policy. As I told you before, we have a huge public services sector, so healthcare, water supply, waste management, public transport, and so on are in the hands of the city. Not always directly, we have much public-private partnership, but the majority of the enterprises, of the public services, they are in the hands of the city. And we have done something innovative. We bind public procurement, public money. In some sectors, we bind it to special criteria. For example, only enterprises that have, let's say, a plan how to support women, for example, or only enterprises that also take young people as employees, they get money from the city. This was quite complicated to implement, because we had to think very long about how it is compatible with the European law. Yeah, so you know this is quite difficult, because European law says everything has to be liberalized and so on. So, but we found a solution. If you're interested in this kind of binding public procurement on special labor market or environmental or what else criteria, so you come to me. we can share our experience with that. Maybe we go a little bit more quickly through it. This is just a slice to show you how many awards on the quality of life Vienna already gained. So of course we are also a little bit proud of that. Yeah, greening the city is of course, after the social issue, the second biggest topic of the Greens in Vienna. So we fight for pedestrian zones and traffic calm zones. Maybe you heard about the big quarrel about the Maria-Hilfer-Straße. It's a big shopping street in Vienna, one of the biggest, that we made to a pedestrian zone. We had a referendum on that. The Conservatives were very much against it. Also the other right-wing parties, the Social Democrats, even our coalition partners did not really support us. But even that, even although given these criteria, we managed to win this referendum. It was a big success last year, and we are very happy to now can support our greening the city program even more strong. Urban gardening, maybe Gerhard afterwards can say some words more on it, because you're very engaged in that. We found new parks, and of course public participation is always implemented when we start new projects. Public transport, we reduced the price of our annual ticket for public transport to symbolically 365 euros a year, so €1 per day. This is really cheap. I think also compared with the prices for public transport in other cities, this is quite cheap. And I think this is one of the biggest steps the Greens have been taken since we are in government, and people, especially young people, are very, very happy with that annual ticket. Even for young people and for for the elderly, it's even more cheaper. Yeah, maybe we do it more quickly because promotion of cycling, of course. Yeah, maybe this also would be a topic for Budapest. Yeah. We established a green bike agency in the city administration and identified certain streets with priority for cycling, and increased the bike terminals, and also we hold quite a lot of conferences on biking. On urban planning, maybe we can say afterwards some words, because then it will be council flats. I told you already, the struggle for housing. Yeah, maybe energy and environment as the last point. We founded a new department of the city administration in charge of energy planning, offering also energy consulting for individuals. This is very popular. Individuals come to us and say, please, can you recommend us how we can save energy in our home, in our daily life? This is very popular. We started it already when we have been in opposition. And now we put it on a higher level by really offering it by the city. We have also solar Kraftwerk plants, power plants, solar power plants, I think it's the right word, with citizens' participation, also very popular. Within hours, the shares for the citizens are sold out. They are really, really keen on that, so we are happy to have some of them in Vienna and also the surroundings of Vienna. And of course, we tried to implement some energy efficiency measures from the city level. For example, the refurbishment of old buildings, thermal insulation, funding of solar terminal facilities, funding of photovoltaic, and modern forms of windows that the buildings don't have to use so much energy. And of course the construction of new passive houses, they are also supported by the city level with a certain amount of money per individual. Maybe also interesting for you in Hungary, of course, our fight against anti-fascism and against racism. This is really a main point for Greens and Social Democrats in Vienna, because, you know, we have this big very right-wing party, the nationalist party, the FPÖ, called Freedom Party, but it has nothing to do with freedom. It's the Blue Party. Formerly, Jörg Haider, you probably all know, was the leader. He died in a car crash in 2008. And now they are quite still strong. They have about 30% in the Vienna City Council. That's pretty much to have a third of the whole city council by right-wing nationalists, and some of them are really fascists. So we really have to fight against it. And we really have to strengthen our projects on democracy as a whole, also in the field of education. Very, very important to fight racism and fascism. That we invest much in education, also in historical education. Maybe Gerhard can say, as historian, some more words on that. For example, we will open soon a monument for deserters. that's not really popular for everybody, yeah, to honor deserters of the Second World War, but I think for the Greens and also for Social Democrats, it's a very important symbol also to say pacifism, and also deserters should be honored officially by the city, because it has they not had any official recognition until now, nor by the national state, nor by the city. So this monument is quite an important symbolic step. We also rename places or streets when they are named after fascists. We rename that. And we try especially to find names of famous women, because too many streets are named only after men. I think there have been always in history many very good women, also popular women, and we want to name parks and streets especially after women. Maybe I stop here because I think we're running out of time. Exactly. And I will hand over to Gerhard. And maybe you got some inspiring ideas for your period after the next elections on the local level, and we can share common ideas together and maybe develop some projects also together. Thanks.
Can I just say that was enormously helpful? Very, very thankful to you. I think that there are at least, I spotted 4 immediately usable ideas, and maybe even more. So thank you ever so much. Thank you. And now it's your turn. Thank you. Thank you.
So I will just continue, because some ideas were already mentioned by Monika. We have, especially on the local level, the Greens in Vienna have a lot of experience with projects that worked, projects that did not work so well. We had successes, which is always good to motivate yourself for the next campaigns or for the next activities. And I just want to point out 2 activities where I was involved personally as well. Just to give an example of how our work on the local level is done. It was already mentioned, the campaign for Marie-Hilfer-Straße pedestrian zone. So this will be one spot, and the second one will be the green presence and green activities in one part of the so-called Trans-Danubia. Trans-Danubia is the part north of the Danube. So in Hungary it's the part west of the Danube, in Vienna it's the part north of the Danube, and there are 2 districts, the 21st and the 22nd, and they together have 35% of the area of the surface of Vienna, and about 350,000 inhabitants together. And this is a very hard place for the Greens, because it's a former industrial districts, workers' districts, where it's very difficult for the Greens to work there. And we pointed out one target area and tried to focus on that and look if that will change something. So these 2 examples I will show. First example is Marie-Hilfer-Straße. Most of you, I'm sure, have been there. Not only once, but maybe often. One personal reminiscence I have to Marie-Hilfer-Straße in connection with Hungary is the late 80s, because many Hungarians used to go there. It was called Magyar-Hilferstraße because so many Hungarians were visiting Marie-Hilfer-Straße. It was just near the Westbahnhof where you arrived by train. And on the 20th of August, this is a national holiday in Hungary, of 1988. We were there as a Greens. We were very young Greens by then, just 2 years into being, and we were against the participation of Austrian companies in the Nagymaros dam project, and we said we must do something against that. In the same years, we also took 2 buses and went to Budapest, and we joined the demonstration with our own own banners. And in order to mobilize for that demonstration, we said we want to do something, but it does not make sense to go from Vienna to Budapest and to leaflets. There were enough people there to do that. But we said a good idea would be to go to Mariahilferstraße, because there are many more Hungarians there than Austrians, and if you want to approach the Hungarians, just approach them in Vienna. So we made leaflets, we let it translate into Hungarian, so we had Hungarian leaflets, and we went to Mariahilferstraße and distributed. Nearly everybody who took it was a Hungarian, so that was really funny, because I think, and I read then in the newspapers on that day, there were 200,000 Hungarians in Vienna visiting Hungary, because it was a holiday, you didn't have to work here, so you came to Vienna. And that was one of the interesting interesting things I associate with Mariahilferstraße. The campaign started because one of the aims of the Greens when we went to the government in Vienna was to make a switch in traffic policy. Before that, it was rather car-oriented and building garages and all those things. And we wanted to have a shift, and we said we need at least 2 or 3 projects that we put into practice to show that it's also working the other way around. One is, for instance, the parking management. It's not allowed now to park for free everywhere in Vienna, but most of the districts already have a kind of management, which means that you need to pay if you want to park your car outside in public space. And one of those pilot projects was also a traffic calming of Mariahilferstraße. Mariahilferstraße is longer, but the section between the Westbahnhof railway station and the Ring, the inner city, in this section we wanted to make traffic calming with a pedestrian zone in the center and with so-called encounter zones. The German word is Begegnungszonen on the 2 sides, which means there you have also car traffic, but they are only allowed to drive 20 kilometers per hour and not quicker, and pedestrians, bikers, etc. have the same right to use the street as the cars. And in the pedestrian zone, of course, there are only the pedestrians and the cyclists, but that was also a question which had been discussed. So when we started the campaign, the first things were to invite the people to take their ideas. There were some meetings, dialogue meetings with the population. They could say we want this or that. So many people said we want more green spaces there. We want places to sit down. We want benches and something like that. And a project was developed. So actually we thought, okay, let's make it. Yeah. And when we started to make it, then political problems shows up, because just by coincidence there was a national election in 2013, and all the other parties used this Mariahilferstraßen issue to mobilize against the Greens, because we went up in the opinion polls. So even our coalition partner, even the Social Democrats, thought about maybe we want to we must do something that the Greens do not grow that quickly. So there were some kind of campaigns to say Mariahilferstraße, that's stupid, it's bad for business, and it's just causing traffic jam, and the people don't like it, etc., etc. And there were more than 800 negative articles in the newspapers, and especially in the so-called yellow press or boulevard media, which are partly also controlled by the ruling party, by the Social Democrats. And the opinion polls started to show that a majority of the people would vote against. So the Social Democrats more or less forced us to have a kind of, I called it plebiscite, but you could also tell it a consultative referendum. So we had a referendum which was not obligatory, but it was said by the city, the outcome will be accepted by us. If they say no, then the traffic calming will be reduced. If they say yes, then we go on. So that was more or less the thing we had to do. We had to make this kind of referendum, and that was scheduled for February, March, for 2 weeks. And then it was inevitable because of the polls that we had to make a campaign, because otherwise we would have lost. And one of the most important projects of the Red Green government would have been lost, or would have been no success. Well, the campaign, there were many elements, so I could talk 2 hours about all those elements of the campaigns, but the most important were we had posters, we had those city lights, you may know when you have been in Vienna, the city light posters. We did mailings to special target groups, to young people, to women, etc., to business people. There was a lot in social media, and if that is technically possible, Pepe, maybe afterwards we could show a part of this video. One of the most important things was a YouTube video that young people made, actually independent from the Greens, but supported by the Greens, to the song Happy of Pharrell Williams, and they made this video on the Marie-Hilfer-Straße, and it was just in the time when already there was some traffic calming, but not with reconstruction of the street, etc., but just not allowed to drive there. So those people went there, and this on YouTube, I don't know how many tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands clicks there were, hits there were to this video, and it really was a great contribution to sensibilize or to mobilize the young people in favor of voting for this pedestrian zone.
És felszította a lázadást.
So maybe we don't have to show. We don't have to show the whole video, but just to give you an impression how it works. Maybe just 1 minute or so.
It might seem crazy what I'm about to say. Sunshine, she's here. You can take a break. I'm a hot air balloon that could go to space. With the air, like I don't care, baby. By the way.
This is a Green MP.
Clap along if you feel like a room without a roof. Clap along if you feel like happiness is the truth. Clap along if you know what happiness is to you. Clap along if you feel like that's what you want to do. Here come bad news talking this and that. To you, don't waste your time. Here's why. Because I'm happy. Clap along if you feel like a room without a roof. Because I'm happy. Clap along if you feel like happiness is the truth. Because I'm happy. Clap along if you know what happiness is to you. Because I'm happy. Clap along if you feel like that's what you want to do.
Because we run out of time, we are not showing the whole. But I think we have the link, so everybody can watch it yourself. I just wanted to show that because a main goal of the Greens was to show that Vienna is a city where you like to live. It's great to live there. There is quality of living, and the project of Marie-Hilfer-Straße was just one of those main projects to show it. So yeah, so what I mentioned before was the elements of the campaign. There was also an info office. I was there myself, so we took all the telephone calls that came in. We answered the emails. There were local discussions, even with our deputy mayoress. She went to cafes and pubs and invited the people to come there. Of course, also people who were negative came there. And then we had the door-to-door campaign, and that was a central issue. I think also Monika joined, so there were many MPs, members of the city council, etc., also personally involved in those. So we rang all the doors, and altogether there were about 186 activists there and visiting nearly 30,000 households. Although not all the people were at home, but so maybe we visited personally, we talked to 10,000 people maybe, but of course they communicated with their neighbors, etc. So it was really influencing the mood also. And this plebiscite, this referendum, was in 2 districts, in District 6 and District 7. So altogether there were about 50,000 voters there. And these were the 2 districts on the 2 sides of Mariahilferstrasse. And also the EU citizens were entitled to vote who were there with legal residence. Yeah, and well, the result was quite a surprise, because at the beginning we did not really think that we will win it. We just wanted to show at least our presence and show that we are fighting for our goals. But in the last week, the mood started to change because of those things what the young people did, also because some of the business people did not follow the Conservative Party's recommendation anymore to be against, because they said, well, it's a chance for us also. So the mood changed. There was a high turnout. So more than 2/3 sent back the ballots, and we had 53.4% in favor and 46.5% against. So that was really a great thing. You see that we danced Pharrell Williams' song, and we danced on the same evening when the result came in. And according to some surveys that were made, they showed that especially the young people great majority of young people were voting in favor. And it's very interesting that majority of old people was against, although the traffic calming is something which is to the benefit of old people, but they did not want the change somehow, and they were influenced by the big parties who are rather strong among old people. So that was a paradox situation, and of course the EU citizens also were very important for that. Well, we had visualizations in the campaign because the street was not reconstructed then, and it's really these pictures. I made these pictures some weeks ago, so it really looks like the visualizations. Often you have visualizations that look much better than the reality then afterwards, but here it's really looking like the visualization. So we really that it was a surprise for me as well when I saw it's really looking like that. So they are constructing now the pedestrian zone. The central part is already finished, and the 2 zones to the west and to the east will be finished to the end of the year. So next year, when we have election, there is already the whole project finished. So this was the one issue which I wanted to show you. The second issue is Donaufeld, which is this part of Trans-Danubia. I will go more quickly through this. There is some information material also in the room, most of it in German, unfortunately, but those of you who can read German can also see it. And of course, we have also a link to a blog which you can watch if you're more interested in. Donaufeld is an area on the border of the 2 districts with altogether about 9,000 voters living there. And the particular features is that it still has partly a rural structure, but it has a great tendency of growth by new housing estates that are built in this area. And that means that young families move there, that people from other districts move there, also from other countries. and the population is more mixed and more dynamic, and this is a potential for green voting. And therefore we said, let's go there and let's make specific activities in this place, because in other places it's very, very difficult to get voters, especially in the outskirts, in the workers' district. So we put out that area and started several activities. So the central target area here, you see it on a map. Those of you who know Vienna, this is the so-called Old Danube, which was part of the Great Danube before the regulation in the 19th century. And this is the area. Here is mainly gardening and fields, vegetable growing, and here are mostly new housing estate being built. So this is the target area with 9,000 people, and there is also an area around with about altogether 30,000 voters where we are also active, but not as strong as in the main area. These are some of the activities we did. We did discussions on the development of the neighborhood. Also the Green Planning Department is cooperating in this, because they are also organizing participation possibilities. I make guided walks through the neighborhood, historic political walks, especially for the people who move there new. They want to know how the area around them is developing, what is the history of it, etc. So that's well received. We make dialogue with civil society. There are a lot of initiatives concerned with traffic, transport, nature protection, etc. Also with work with young people, etc. So we cooperate with them. And then we have direct information like a journal, 2 times a year, a blog, email newsletter, etc. And we have projects like urban gardening. We are also involved, where there is a lot of interest by the people on that. I also know that in Budapest there are several projects already running. This is the newspaper that comes out, the journal we send out in 15,000 copies in this area 2 times a year. This is the blog, so those of you who are interested in can just look there. You can get all the information just giving in the Word, and then finding the articles and inputs. Since autumn 2009 we have this blog, and the interest is growing. So the number of hits here is compared. So in 2011 there were 4,700 hits, and now just till the end of September there are already 14,500 hits, and it's not there are still 3 months left, so we maybe will have a new record in this year, because the people want uncensored information. So we just put our not only our information in, but also from the civil society. If they have interesting events, we report it. If there are interesting people living there, organic farmers, etc., we also report on that. And this is the election result of the European election in this green target area. I must also say we made a discussion also with Monika in the European election campaign, so the people also know that we are present in election. We have interesting people who have to say something, who have good ideas. So and in this area with 8,300 voters, it was for the first time that we became number 1. So we got nearly 26% of the votes, and we became stronger than the Social Democrats, who were the leading party so far. Also the neoliberal party was not as strong as it was meant. It's mainly also because of our work. And well, this was actually a great success. And we hope to continue with that kind of dynamic till the local election. But there are still some challenges. So one thing is the political majority for sustainable transport solution, especially the Social Democrats, sometimes blocking solutions where car traffic is reduced. So it's always hard negotiations with them. The second is a kind of constellation between between maintaining free or green spaces and constructing the necessary flats, because Vienna is growing. Since the 80s, Vienna got 300,000 additional inhabitants, whereas Budapest in the same time lost 300,000. So we have another dynamic, and of course we have to construct flats, and the people, when they are living there and they get a flat in their neighborhood, they don't want it, and they're also blaming the Greens. So to have a creative way of checking this dilemma is one of the challenges, to get the people involved, to tell them what kind of quality would you like with this new housing estate, what projects like neighborhood gardens, green spaces, etc. So this is a continuous dialogue. And the third thing is also to take the dialogue with the active citizens serious. There are many, you see the photo to the right, there are many assemblies, working groups, etc., where the people can put their ideas in. So these are the things we have to face until the local elections. And well, we hope that this will work out. Maybe you got some inspiration also for your elections in next week. Thank you.
Thank you very, very much.
It's you know, there's a lot of ideas that you throw up in your presentation, which is very similar to Budapest, not just in terms of pedestrian zones in the inner city areas, community gardening, but also education. And I know that in most of your projects you've been very successful, but it took a lot of energy and a lot of years of work. And you also now in the city government for the first time after decades of work. And Vienna is an enjoyable city. It's good fun to be in Vienna always. And the living quality of Vienna is among the best in the world, as far as I know. According to international standards, it's Stuttgart, Berlin, Vienna, Paris. And greens are everywhere. And Vienna perhaps is the #1 green city in the world in terms of living quality, life expectation, free access to Wi-Fi, education, and the green spaces in Vienna as well. They are huge. So we really, there is a lot to learn from your politicians and your activists as well. Moni mentioned a very interesting challenge that you're trying to solve, that you invest, and it raises a paradox as well, that you're trying to bring in investments in the times of crisis. Green politics is very critical of capitalism and globalism. Yet we can't pretend as if there is no development without capital or without investment. So it would be very interesting to hear how you can balance between the green mission, being critical with the capitalist entrepreneurs, and being pragmatic green entrepreneurs in a city. That would be very interesting on some details. That's my question. But I would also like to invite you, if you have any questions or comments, we can maybe collect one or two. Gergő Pongrácz, if you could come here, please. He's our expert on many things, but especially transport and communications.
Thank you. Just a very short question. So we are in the process, or probably, hopefully, in the process of introducing congestion charge in Budapest. The question is whether you also plan it for Vienna, or if yes, when, and if no, then why not?
Yeah, please, you can. Yeah, sure.
That's an interesting question, because the Greens, we were always in favor of congestion charge, and there are enough international examples where it works well. For instance, Stockholm, where it was introduced, and there was a referendum, and in the referendum the inner city of Stockholm, the people were in favor, so it was kept even then when the majorities changed and the conservative city government came into being. They could not abolish the congestion charge anymore. and it would also be an interesting instrument also in Vienna, in addition to other instruments we already introduced, like the parking management that I mentioned. But the problem is that the Social Democrats are completely against, and before the election of 2010, there was a referendum on some issues made by the Social Democrats, who were ruling with absolute majority, and they put in a question on congestion charge, which was a little manipulative in the way it was formulated, and of course all the boulevard media, etc., and car driver clubs, etc., started to campaign against. So of course it was like you could expect, there was a majority of people voting no for congestion charge. So that was clear for us in this period. It's no issue. But if there will be negotiations after the next elections, I'm sure that we will put this issue up again, and we will see what comes out in these negotiations.
And your question, how we do it with investments and with the enterprises and the capitalistic system. We have quite an interesting system in Austria, maybe also comparable with Germany. It's the system of the social partners and the social dialogue. It's very fundamental and very strong in Austria. The social partners, so the Chamber of Labor together with the Chamber of Commerce and also the industrials and the agricultural chamber, they sit regularly together and negotiate. Yeah, this is one basis why there is, compared with other cities or other countries, a high level of, let's say, social peace. Yeah, we don't have many demonstrations on the streets in Vienna or in Austria because of the social partners sitting together and negotiating the social system, the amount of investments, where to invest. And because the Social Democrats, of course, and now the Greens are so strong in Vienna, yeah, and we take the other side of the social partners, the side of the commerce and the enterprises, on our table. We negotiate very much, and of course they don't get everything they want, but I think Vienna is a very good ground for big enterprises to invest, but not only for big. We have 99% of our enterprises in Austria are medium and small enterprises. So also the policy of the Chamber of Commerce is not fighting for the rights of the big companies, but fighting for the possibilities to earn money for the medium and small enterprises. So maybe this is one form of the answer. And also citizens' participation and NGOs are also strong and even getting more strong in this negotiation process with the social partners. So it's quite an interesting model that we are also discussing now on the European level. So the social dialogue should be strengthened also on the European level, and this is also one of the bases why there's a comparable good social peace in Vienna.
Maybe there is time for one more question, and in the meantime I'd like to ask Pepe for any good news. Technically it's working, but I still have no answer, so we're working on it. Okay. Moni will have to leave for a short moment for the media, because the media is here, the Royal Television of Hungary is here. So please come forward. Jöjjön, nyugodtan, és akkor tudják tolmácsolni. Persze.
Magyarul mondom. A bécsi hagyományok, úgy látom, érvényesülnek nagyon sok téren város működésében. Mondanák néhány példát. Amikor közlekedésmérnök hallgató voltam a Műszaki Egyetemen, akkor nekem bemutatták a személyközlekedési üzemtamba azt, hogy hogyan próbálják zónásítani Bécset. Ez a 70-es évek közepe vége volt. Én azt láttam, hogy Bécsnek sikerült ezt végigvinni, tehát hogy kiszorítani a városba az autókat. Most említették a dugódíjat. Budapesten ezt megpróbálták a 90-es években megcsinálni, de nem tudták végigvinni. Tehát mi volt az, amivel ezt a következetességet végig tudták vinni, hogy a város centrumából ki tudták szorítani a zónásítással az autókat. Tehát ez egyik. A másik, hogy említettem az előző megjegyzésemben, hogy a hulladék kérdés minden városnak nagyon lényeges kérdése. Tehát a városi hulladék, illetve szemétnek a eltávolítását hogyan tudják úgy megoldani, hogy ne zavarja a város működését. A harmadik, Monika említette a szociális lakásokat. Ennek van hagyománya Bécsben, mert ha jól emlékszem, a 30-as években kezdték ezt el, és a Krejszki kancellársága idején terjedt el a 60-as, 70-es években. Tehát itt van egy ilyen történelmi ív, amit visznek tovább a zöldek is Bécsben. Tehát nagyon örülnék, hogyha ezeket a tapasztalatokat meg tudnák osztani Magyarországon, mert ez nagyon lényeges, és nagyon érdekes volt az a fél mondat, amit mondott, hogy még Magyarországon, Budapesten a 2 milliós Budapest lélekszáma lecsökkent kb. 1.600.000-1.700.000-re, tehát kb. 300.000-re, addig Bécsbe 300.000-re megugrott a lakosok száma, hogy érték el ezt a vonzó hatást, mert itt Budapesten inkább a suburban, tehát a városon kívüli területre költöztek ki, míg Bécsben meg beköltöztek a városba. És akkor még egy ilyen kapitalistákhoz kapcsolódó kérdés, hogy mivel Bécsben majdnem minden utcasarkon van egy bank, hogyan tudják elérni azt, hogy ezek a bankok közösségi célokat szolgáljanak. Ezt úgy hívják, hogy etikus bankolás, etikus pénzügy. Hogy mekkora a számaránya ezeknek az úgynevezett etikus bankoknak, amelyek akár a zöld, akár pedig az élhetőséget szolgálják. Tehát a helyi közösség számára teremtenek pénzt, financiális beruházási hátteret.
Well, there were a lot of questions. I don't know if I can answer all of them, but let's take. Okay, so the social apartments. Yes, there is a tradition, as you mentioned, and it's actually a very good tradition of the so-called Red Vienna. That was the time between the two world wars. And between 1919 and 1934, there were more than 60,000 council flats built. So some of those big blocks, Karl Marxhof, etc., outside Austria, and this tradition was followed after the Second World War, and until the beginning of the 2000s, there were about 220,000 council flats built, and of course one of the challenges is not to privatize council flats. There are right-wing parties who want to privatize them. Some flats owned by the city were even sold out by the Social Democrats. That was stopped after a green campaign a few years ago. The most important element of these social apartments, of these council flats, is that it is a kind of bulwark against homelessness, because the city of Vienna has they can move people into those council flats. There are about 10,000 every year that get free because people die or people move out. So for those who need cheap, flat, affordable housing, they can move into those council flats. This is one thing. Then the transport, you mentioned the change of the transport of those calm zones in Vienna. That was not always so easy, I have to say. In the 70s, the Greens were not existing as a party, and there were some progressive planners, traffic planners, who introduced first pedestrian zone in Kärntner Straße that was against very, very hard resistance, and it's always like that. If you introduce it and it works, then the people accept it. But if you ask the people before, usually they say no. even that was a danger in the Marie-Hilfer-Straßen campaign, and without our door-to-door campaign, we would never have won this referendum. And in the parking management, these zones where you have to pay for parking on public space, that we introduced without referenda, I have to say openly, because otherwise we would not have an extension of one single district, maybe, because the Conservative Party and some media really mobilized against that. But the interesting thing is, as soon as it is introduced, now if you vote in those districts, you would get a majority of people, because they saw that the traffic was reduced by 20 to 25% because of that, yeah, because the commuters are not coming in again, and many of them really switch over to public transport. So it is a success, but the people are not always so well educated that they say before, let's do it, but they are against change very often, as I mentioned. Well, the waste solution, that's maybe easier in Vienna because there are 3 incinerators, and even 4 because there is also some incinerator for toxic, for special waste as well. It's even, I think there are even overcapacities there for incineration, and especially one incinerator where the Greens were very much against. It was rebuilt. That's the one where Friedensreich Hundertwasser made the design. But I think it's a question of education, and there is a good education of people, and the people accept more and more the separation of waste and dealing with this waste issue. Yeah, and the last question was the increase of population in Vienna. Yeah, I think there are different reasons. In Budapest, I don't know exactly what the reason is. Maybe also that people move out to the outskirts, building their one-family houses there. Maybe some young people leave because of the government politics since 2010. That maybe also is one issue. Then there is of course a difference that there is a lot of migration to Vienna from outside Austria, even from outside Europe. So there are a lot of immigration to Vienna, also from other regions inside Austria, and the quality of living is also a factor. Yeah, that we have good universities, we have a good life quality. There is affordable housing because of those council housing and those subsidized flats that are there, and all this together is a reason. Until the 80s it went down because the people were overaged. There were many old-aged people. They died. Many of them died in the 80s, and since then there is also a change that the average is younger, the average age, and Vienna is very attractive. So that is the but as I said in my presentation, it's also a challenge, of course, to deal with it, because not all people are happy when you say Vienna is growing. They rather want to have their quiet life as it was before. I heard that already our friend from Holland is coming by Skype.
Okay, thank you very much.